Hello, everybody. So, for my final analytic presentation, I did mine on my favorite basketball team, the Boston Celtics. And my name is Tyler Holcomb. So, to kick everything off, we're going to talk about last season and where the team was at. This was the year of the bubble, so games were shortened a little bit as the record was only 48 and 24, not the normal 82 games that the NBA plays. We were third in the Eastern Conference this year due to a couple key additions. Kemba Walker and Enes Kanter really highlight that list with a couple of good rookies behind them. We did lose a lot though this year. A lot of all-star level talent and guys that are getting paid at an all-star level rate as well. Those big ones including Kyrie Irving, Al Horford, Aaron Baines, Terry Rozier, and a couple more that would come off the bench. A bunch of key injuries this year. Robert Williams missed a lot of games. He's a promising young center. Kemba Walker missed quite a few. The biggest being Gordon Hayward, though, just because of the timing in the playoffs. It kind of put the team just at a halt from where we were at and what we thought we could be in the rest of the playoffs, especially with the Miami Heat looming in the distance. But after the bubble, we do have to bounce back this year, and it looks pretty promising as our preseason power ranking from NBA.com puts us third in the Eastern Conference, which is right where we finished last year. But we do have a couple key additions this year that I'm pretty excited about. We have two good rookies coming off the bench that hopefully can provide a pretty big spark for us, as well as Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague that can provide veteran leadership, and then Thompson, just the amount of effort and strength that he has in the paint will be very big. New assistant coach, Evan Turner, who just retired after playing in the league for 10 years. We did lose a little bit this year as far as Gordon Hayward and Enes Kanter, and Brad Wanamaker was kind of a no-name that came off the bench for us that actually did quite a bit. And then looking forward into years remaining on players' contracts, we have guys like Jaylen Brown and Tatum, who are two of the biggest young stars in the league, who we each have for 4 and 6 years respectively. And then Kemba Walker's got another 3 years on contract as well. Looking ahead at our committed salaries, which is the 15-man roster, and then any additional players that we have committed salaries to but aren't quite playing with us anymore. Maybe they're playing with our younger team, the Maine Red Claws. But anyways, this season we'll be spending about $117 million, which is definitely over the NBA cap, which is $109 million, give or take a few thousand. And then looking forward into this next coming seasons, 2021 and 22, we have 103.6 million committed right now. I'm sure that will go up as players sign more contracts. And then 22, 23, that number is obviously going to drop because contracts are going to be expired and we'll be having new players. But we're looking at about 82.3 million committed so far for that year. As far as areas for improvement, being third in the Eastern Conference doesn't necessarily look like you need a bunch of improvement areas, but looking through a bunch of advanced statistics and more station based off losses, I think that's the biggest part that I paid attention to. Our bench scoring the whole year struggled. We were 29th in the NBA, so we need a couple guys to come off and be able to create their own shots off the bench. And then the next four statistics I looked at were just looking at NBA teams during their losses. So in games that you did not come out on top, where were you struggling? And out of all NBA teams during their losses, we were 28th in assists per game, 27th in three-point shooting percentage, 24th in fouls committed, and 13th in defensive rebounding. Just showing that in games that we have lost, we weren't able to move the ball very well. We weren't able to hit our shots from deep. We were fouling too much, and then really, the 13th in the NBA in defensive rebounds doesn't look too bad, but on paper it doesn't. But just watching the game, it looked like we were getting bodied on the inside, not very physical, and we were letting teams take advantage of us in that way. So those are a few areas that we want to improve on in this next coming year. In doing so, we want to look at a couple free agents that'll help us fit those needs. Number one on the board, I think, is Danilo Gallinari, just because of the prolific scorer that he is and his ability to get the ball on the court, put the ball on the court for himself, and score from anywhere that he wants to. He can help spread the court. He'll help fill our three-point needs, which we struggled a lot in last year in our losses. And for a guy that's not a big man per se, he still pulled down 4.6 defensive rebounds per game. That 40.5 three-point percentage doesn't hurt either. Looking to bolster up the inside a little bit, we definitely want to take a look at Dwight Howard, who had a little bit of a resurgence year in LA this year, won a championship with the Lakers, and he was averaging 7.5 points per game and 7.3 rebounds per game just off the bench. So that's a really strong physical presence that we're looking for. He was actually 11th in the NBA in rebounding per game off the bench, so he has basically come accustomed to his bench role, and he's willing to put in the effort that he put in as a star when he was in Orlando, but he's willing to do that off the bench now. And then the biggest thing that I like about Dwight Howard in this free agency is the smaller contract that he's accepting now. That'll help our salary cap. It'll also make him happy as well because then it's what he's asking for, and then we'll be able to sign maybe another big dollar free agent after him. And once we sign that smaller level contract with Dwight Howard, that money that we are saving can go to a guy like Rodney Hood. He didn't play a whole lot this last year, if at all, with the Portland Trail Blazers due to injury. But in the few games that he did play, he did average 11 points per game, 1.5 assists per game, and this is on a smaller level because he didn't play a complete season, but he shot 49.3% from the three-point line once he was actually on the court. Biggest thing with Rodney Hood, similar to Danilo Gallinari, is he creates his own shot and he's able to spread the floor for our young guys like Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, and let them emerge as the superstars that we think they're going to be. He's an above average 3-point shooter, so like we said earlier, when we're struggling in our losses with 3-point shooting, he's a guy that can help boost us a little bit. And then kind of what I said earlier about him creating his own shot, but he can be that guy off the bench that really doesn't need anyone around him in order to create offense, and he can spread the ball for others as well. Trade to make. This is maybe going to be a little bit iffy with a bunch of Celtics fans, but I would like to get rid of Kemba Walker and trade him for Malcolm Brogdon and a draft pick, whether that be a first or second round draft pick. The biggest reason, this clears almost $13.7 million in cap room for next season. And why does it make sense? We couldn't be able to sign a guy like Danilo Gallinari without this cap room, as he's making nearly $19 million next year. And then Malcolm Brogdon, I honestly think he seems to be a better fit with our game plan and what Brad Stevens wants to do with the team. He can be a defensive stopper that Kemba Walker has shown that he just is not. He can get the rest of the team involved, whether it be Jason Tatum and Brown spreading the floor for him or just making big defensive plays that turn into offensive spurts at the other end. And then also he's a better catcher and shooter from three-point range than Kemba Walker. Not saying he's a better shooter overall, but coming off the ball, he'll be able to make a play for himself as opposed to Kemba Walker, who's got to have the ball in his hands quite a bit. And so with those three free agent signings and a big blockbuster trade, we're looking towards this year's projected salary. Last season, the team spent about $125.5 million. With the current 15-man roster and the two committed contracts, we're looking at lowering that bar a little bit this year to $117.4 million, and that's without the free agents and trade that I wanted to make. So with the adjusted 15-man roster, not including those two committed salaries, we're looking at about $115.8 million, which is less than we spent last year, but still within that $5 million range. So we're not looking at too big of a salary change going into this adjusted year. Those free agent signings that I talked about with Gallinari, Howard, and Rodney Hood are going to replace the contracts of Carson Edwards and Javonte Green. And the trade places Kemba Walker in Indiana, bringing Malcolm Brogdon over to Boston. The adjustments I really think are going to improve the on-court performance, but they also will contribute to salary cap issues for the team, as the team was already over the NBA salary cap this year. And then looking towards this season, with the two committed contracts, with all the free agents, with all the trades, we are looking at a total adjusted salary of $116.9 million, just barely short of $117 million for this next season. So the salary cap issues, we are over the salary cap this year with that adjusted number by $7.8 million. The team was already over the cap, so I'm not too worried about that looking into this season. But what does that mean? It means that the roster flexibility will go down, meaning we can't just put anyone where we want. We can't look to sign all the lower level free agents that we want just to fit our needs. We're going to have to kind of make guys play in positions that maybe they're not too comfortable with, like putting Tatum at the 4 or something like that. We're going to have to make future trades and contract negotiations in years coming, and the on-court performance due to those trades may decline a little bit, but I leave it to Danny Ainge in the front office to make those moves in the years after this one. Looking at expected wins, I did this using the win shares from each player. And this next season, I projected the team to win 50 games. That's excluding the 2 rookies since they don't have a win share total, obviously, as they were playing college basketball before. But the first number, 50 games, is calculated using each player's win shares from this last season. And win shares are an estimate of the number of wins contributed by a player. And this does not adjust for time missed. So guys like Rodney Hood, who missed a bunch of games, would only have a smaller number of win shares because they didn't get to play out the whole season. So it doesn't adjust for everything that we need to, but it does provide a pretty strong number for what we're looking at, as 50 games would still place us in the upper level of the playoffs for the Eastern Conference. And then taking another statistic, 45.4 games projected to win. This is calculating using the average of a player's win shares over the past 2 years. So let's say Tatum had 7 this year and only 5 the year before. We're going to average that out, and that would be 6. So it does adjust for players a little bit, but it also doesn't allow for you to look at the growth of certain players like Tatum and Brown becoming superstars in the league, or guys like Dwight Howard maybe taking a big leap, or for guys that got injured or are on the age decline. So it can be a little bit less accurate than the first prediction that I made, just due to us having one of those younger rosters that's improving on such a big scale. And then looking ahead after those projected wins for this next year, we also want to look at how we're going to get all those wins. I think the biggest thing for the Celtics this year is going to be the evolution of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. In my opinion, maybe the best young duo in the NBA, as every year they seem to get better and better and make the team a lot stronger. Going to look for a strong presence in the paint this year. Daniel Theis does a great job, but he's only a 6'8", 6'9" center. So the addition of Thompson and Howard will allow them to guard the bigger guys, while maybe Theis can move to a 4 role or just be that defensive stopper off the bench. And then we also want to eliminate some of those defensive rebounding issues this last year, which I think Thompson and Howard will really help us with that. Spreading the floor. Malcolm Brogdon, I think, is going to be a better opportunity creator for other players, while guys like Gallinari and Hood are going to open up the floor with their three-point shooting. We got Aaron Nesmith that we just drafted, who's supposed to be the best young shooter in the draft. And then Peyton Pritchard, who's going to come off the bench for Brogdon and hopefully be that young spark and just a little energy spark that we need off the bench. Bench scoring. With these moves that are being made, I'm assuming Gallinari is going to be in the starting lineup, and we're going to move Smart and Hood to the bench. And we're going to work with the 29th ranked scoring bench and hopefully use those guys in order to bolster that up and be able to create more shots and more opportunities off the bench that we didn't before. We're looking at a bench lineup of Marcus Smart, Aaron Nesmith, Rodney Hood, guys maybe like Daniel Theis, Tristan Thompson. Depending on where they're coming from, Dwight Howard's definitely going to be in that bench role. And then guys returning from last year like Semi Ojeleye, Grant Williams, Robert Williams. It's going to be a really exciting year for the Celtics, and I think that there's a lot to look forward to. And maybe making some of these moves or the progression of rookies and guys like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown are going to boost the Celtics into that upper level playoff team that they're used to being. Thank you very much. Have a good one.